Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pink Nest. I'm having Arnold here with me today, dialing in all the way from Paraguay. He describes himself an explorer, generalist, innovator, trainer, coach. And he did so much things in his life that he will tell you the story about himself. But I'm super excited that we have finally, jumped on this recording. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let's start where we always start, and this is childhood. So you grew up in the Netherlands, and what is your first childhood memory about growing up? I'm interested in your childhood.
Well, my upbringing was not nice. It's my father was a military officer then,
Mhm.
and at home it was worse than at his work. So he was like a dictator. So nothing was asked, everything was commanded. Yeah, command and control, and
Mhm.
that is the way we all grew up. I have two siblings and my mother, and it impacted everyone. And so the common denominator is you grow up in fear. You're afraid that my father would be angry, yeah, or you do something incorrectly, and that is something which impacted everyone in my family, including myself.
Yeah, you described when you were writing. I mean, you described yourself as a feeling like a little bit of a misfit, like your child through your childhood and growing up. How did it actually look like and feel like for young Arnold?
Well, I pretty much look the same, but that because of my haircut and whatever. But remember, well, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. That's when all the boys had long hair. Yeah, like the student protest and all the, well, it was before your time, but it's like student protest, boys get long hair, they wear jeans. I had a little bit longer hair than I have now, but it's like, yeah, I have short hair. I was not allowed to have jeans. So that is when everything started. Like, I'm a misfit because as a child, you don't want to be at least not much different from the people in your class. And I was very different, yeah, from the way I looked, my clothes, what I was allowed to do, what I was not allowed to do. So that, yeah, from a very young age, yeah, give me totally the feeling of a misfit.
Did you feel that there is somebody in your life during growing up phase that was there to help you, or was there somebody that made a really impact besides your father,
No,
obviously for the negative impact, but still?
no, there was nobody to help me, nobody. Yeah, so that's why I'm well. Every negative thing has a positive side. Yeah, so the positive side is that I'm very accustomed to being alone, and the other side is I'm very accustomed to learn new things because I always had to perform at a certain level, and if my learning and you know my grades at school and everything was okay, then he would not be angry. So it's like that's why I learned a lot and very quickly and easily, and I developed a discipline which is, well, at the time is not nice, but now is like my discipline. Well, basically saved my life. So it's like all of these things, like I said, have a flip side. Yeah? And the misfit thing carried on into, oh yeah, you mentioned about my profile. Like, I like innovating, I like creating. If you do that, you are by definition a misfit. You are by definition alone because nobody likes to change, and nobody
Yeah,
likes to
that's true. Mhm.
and nobody likes to do something different. And I was always the guy coming up with new ideas and new products and new services and new stuff, and meet resistance. And people are like, oh, let's keep it this way. And so it's like,
Mm.
in that way, people look at you not like, oh, he's the interesting guy with new ideas. They're like, oh no, holy shit, we gotta change. I don't want that.
He's coming again. He's going to bring something to change again. We don't want that. But it's interesting that you've mentioned two things actually, which I found really profound. One is this fact of being alone, I think, and this second one is this: people don't like change, because this is something that I talk about very often, because people really are having a hard time, particularly in the world today, when you're bombarded with social media and constant presence and constant being vocal and, just being everywhere at the same time, that people are really having a hard time being alone. I mean, disconnecting is one thing, but being alone, which is actually a great thing, if you ask me at least, this is something that people really, and it kind of has this negative connotation, doesn't it? Like, wow, I don't want to be alone, but I think people are actually mixing loneliness with being alone, which are two completely different things.
I was exactly going to mention that there's a total difference between being alone and being lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah.
things are totally separate.
Mm-hmm.
I love being alone. I also like to be with other people, but then after that, I need to be alone again.
Yeah,
To
me too.
recharge and to
Absolutely.
digest things.
Mm. You've mentioned you've spent first 20 years in technology and organizational leadership. What drew you to this world? Tell us a little bit about this part of your life.
Well, it was not a conscious decision. Like I want to go in there or whatever. It's like I said, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. That's when I went to school and then later on to university. But in those days, nobody asked, is like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What's your profession? What's your career? Nothing was asked or mentioned or whatever. So it was just like, at some point in time, my father said, you have to go to university. I had no clue what it was. And so it was like, but the great thing for me was I can live outside of the house. I was like, okay, I'm in. So I want to get out of the house and live somewhere else. I'm going to do it. So, and then I started something. I started economics and it was terrible. So then I switched to law where I was really good at. And I got a master's in law. So it's like, after that, I was still in the time that I had to go to mandatory to go in the army, for a year and a half. That changed now, and now they want to reestablish it. But I had to go in the army. So, and then after that, you got to find a job. So my thing was, I folk with economics, whatever. Like, okay, my father worked in government, the army, and I was like, oh, that's nothing for me. So, and then I was like, what I found kind of attractive. We talk about the 70s and the 80s, beginning of the 80s, and it's like, I want to go with business, companies. Sounds exciting. I had no clue. I didn't know, but it was just what I picked up in mind. And then I tried to get a job in business. Yeah. So in those times, you look at newspaper ads. Yeah, that shows how old
Still
I am.
time on people who are actually having newspapers, printed ones.
Yeah, but like, that's the only thing you had. Yeah, so it was like, yeah, you look at newspaper, and then that was one thing is like business, and the other thing is like, well, maybe I get into a legal job like a lawyer, or but the judge was like, in order in Netherlands to become a judge, you need to study for another 6 years, and I'm like, oh, I don't like that. I've studied enough. So that's when well, the legal thing, whatever. When I started looking for a job, it was the highest unemployment rate ever in our country. So you apply for a job like management trainee in a big company, which I thought was interesting. You were one of 1,000 for one spot. So it like, so anyway, I ended up in a small company which was involved in something technology was extremely advanced. It was introducing the barcodes on all the food products, which you find now in the supermarket, which everybody thinks is normal. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you have the barcode, you have the scanner, and you pay. But again, before the 80s, it didn't exist. Yeah, there were just stickers on the product what the price was, and then somebody typed in at the cashier typed in the price. Yeah, so a whole new thing, but very technology advanced, which was behind it. So I started working in that organization, and then from that organization, I made the switch to digital equipment, which was then the second largest IT company in the world. And that's where, because it was all about change and new things, I was very successful.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, people really, I think now, people growing up nowadays, I think they don't even imagine because technology made a really significant gap between the 70s, 80s, 90s, even to where we are today. It's a lot of things have changed and have changed really profoundly. I mean, even in my generation, a lot of things like invention of mobile, even computers, for example. This was not, I didn't grow up with a computer. So
Yeah.
everything that's normal now. I mean, I did at the end get a Commodore, which was amazing at the time. I was 6 or 7 years old. So we were pretty advanced in that matter. But yeah, I mean, it was really not common. Anyway, let's talk then about your move from the technology world into the world of psychology and personal leadership. Tell us a little bit what happened.
So mainly my roles in the corporate world were centered around introducing something new, new products, new technologies, new companies, mergers and acquisitions. So everything was new. So it was innovation related. And the other thing is, I've worked in the service division, and services, as opposed to product, a service is intangible. It's something which a person has to do. An engineer has got to go and repair your computer system, or got to pick up the phone and answer your question. So it's an intangible thing. It's not like this is a glass and I'm going to buy a glass and I can show you the glass. No, service is basically a contract which says, I'm going to help you when you have a problem. So it's like, but it's people related. It's the behavior of people which determines the success of your service.
Mm.
That's where I worked for 12, 13 years. So I was very much into, well, without realizing it, into the behavioral world. Yeah? And when I left the corporate world, I was totally fed up with it, because most of the things which they, well, and they still do in public, is what they say: we care about the people, we care about the climate. Where it's not true, they only care about their bonus and the money. So it's um it's where I said, no, I don't want to work in that world anymore. I was, in their terms, very successful. I was like, I want to start my own business. This was in 2000, and it's all about, and that's where I started my own journey in, because what I say is like, my mental part and understanding business and how to do all these things, well, I was very comfortable with. But then I get into the world of like, I had to deal with my emotion. I didn't know I had emotion because they were suppressed all my life. And spirituality for me were a bit weird guys with beards and gray looking skin and whatever. And I'm like, I want to know about all these things. Yeah, I want to find out. And so for me, it was a total new shift, what I call from fitting in to flying out. Is like, I knew that game, but the game of flying out and figuring out, who am I? What do I want? What do I want to do? What do I love? There are all these new areas. I thought I knew everything, but I knew nothing. So it's like, so for me, it's like a whole new world opened up. And that, yeah, I've been, well, if you are in innovation like me or whatever, you have to be curious. Otherwise, you cannot do it. So it's like, I was like in heaven, like, oh, I got to figure out, I'm going to do this training. I'm listening to this and read this book and whatever. And so that's how I get into entrepreneurship, and in parallel, discovering a whole new world, but basically an internal world.
Hmm. You've mentioned a word called unconditioning. And it's interesting. Tell us a little bit what it is about. I have a few questions about this, but I think it's a very powerful, but also kind of confronting word because, you have to somehow, at least from what I read it and what I understanding, somehow dismantle all your beliefs and just, yeah, it's something that we can relate to what we said before. People don't like to change. People just want to stay in their comfort zone. So tell us a little bit more about this.
When there are no suitable words, I make up my own words. So that's where I go from fitting in to flying out. That's something I figured out from, and I try to have it as neutral as possible. Is like I created unconditioned. What became clear to me is that basically from the moment we are born, we're being conditioned to be someone who we are not. In the moment you well, at least in my case, but in most people's case, when are you a good baby? When you do exactly what your parents tell you to do. When you're not crying, when you're not spoiling your food over the floor, when later on when you get good grades at school. Yeah. What do they do at school? Doesn't matter, primary school, high school, university, everything. When are you a good student? When you do exactly what the teacher tells you to do. Then you go to work. Doesn't matter whether it's big or small companies. When are you okay? When you do exactly what the boss tells you to do. So by the time we're 25, the only thing what we have learned is what I call you live someone else's life. You do exactly if you well, I became very good at that, and it's supposed to be a little bit clear after my explanation now. Is like if I meet the expectations of other people, Arnold is okay.
Mm.
Right? That's conditioning because it pushes me to be someone who I'm not. I was 40 years old, and you might say, "Oh, that's old or young or whatever." Most people die without knowing these questions, or people. I had my first coach. This was in 2000, so that was very new then. My coach asked it, "But Arnold, what do you want?" And I'm like, "What again? What do you say,
Yeah.
Arnold? What do you want?" And because I was rambling, yeah, I don't want a boss anymore. And I think these big companies are shitty. I don't want this. I don't want this. He said, Arnold, I understand, but what do you want? This was the first time in my life ever someone had asked me that question.
Mm.
That is
Yeah.
conditioning.
Mm. And I think it's also, I think that it's true what you mentioned. I think this really starts in a very early childhood, actually, from birth, actually, because you are somehow filling in somebody else's expectations, not yours. Um, but you really worked with a lot of managers, also experts, entrepreneurs. What's actually the most common thing that you find underneath that overload of this conditioning throughout their whole lives? And is it hard to actually get them away from these beliefs and this conditioning? I think it's a perfect word, actually.
Well, yes, there are common denominators and everybody's different. They got different experiences. I say everybody's unique. There's no person in the world like Nika. There's no person in the world like Arnold. We have
Mm.
different experiences, different talents, different traumas, different everything. So what does it do from what I say, let's say at least 15 years of education? Why do we need 15 years? It's crazy. It's so long. Look at the animal world. Look at nature, everything. Nothing has an incubation period of 15 years. So it's like, why is that? Because we need 15 years to trans- transform your uniqueness into sameness. That's what they're
Mm,
doing.
mm,
The conditioning, and that unconditioning, if it's been 15 years, is already a tough job. But when you're 30, 40, 50, 60 and older, to remove that conditioning, that takes work, because it's been part of basically your identity. So coming back to your question, what is the common denominator? The common denominator is that most people have been and are living someone else's life, which means the life of their father, mother. Yeah, look at women who are supposed to meet the expectations of the mother. They've been living the things of their bosses, of their spouses, or whatever. All these things, which I just gave the example, is like, Arnold, what do you want, or whatever. Most people are in the same situation because you're not living your own life, you're living someone else's life. So that is a common denominator. And the other one I would like to mention, Nika, is that two other things. We're nearing the end of your stuff. So two other things. The main thing is the feeling I'm not good enough. I've not met anyone who said, no, I cannot relate to what you're saying, Arnold. I don't have that feeling. Everybody has that feeling.
mm,
And the other one is be kind to yourself. Most people have that inner voice, which we adequately, but sadly, call an inner critic. It's terrible, that inner voice. It's like it's always criticizing. Oh, Arnold, you should have done this. Oh, Arnold, you forgot to mention this. Oh, Arnold, you should have said this. Oh, Arnold, that was lousy. So, like the way we communicate inside of ourselves to ourselves is horrible.
mm.
If I would speak to other people, to Nika, to anyone on the street, in the way my inner voice speaks to me, I would get beaten up every day. So it's like, yeah,
Mm.
it's really ugly. Yeah. So what I help people is like help in the process of like try to discover who you are and try to let go of all those outside expectations. And in the process, be kind to yourself.
And do you think, because you've mentioned, and I totally agree with you, majority of population is probably where at the stage where we are talking about now. So somebody, they're mostly living somebody else's lives. What do you think? Because, for example, one of the things that crosses my mind is some kind of profound life change usually has to happen in order for people to start thinking differently. Either this is like tragedy, accident, death, something significant has to happen, usually, not always, I'm not saying always, but unfortunately, which is really actually unfortunate because we should not be waiting for something like this to happen. But this is the first thing that crossed my mind, is that usually this kind of path toward self-exploration and just getting out of this conditioning, like you're mentioning, usually this is one of the things that I found most likely to happen. What's your experience?
I totally agree with you. And the word I'm using is pain. You need to experience a certain level of pain where you like say, now it's enough. I want something else. I don't know what, but I'm not going to continue like this. And this pain can be physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, whatever. Is like where people are triggered. Is like, I need something else.
Mm. Mm. And also, I think this pain that you mentioned, I think you figure out when you go through something like this, and I think most of us have some at some point in life. Some people maybe less, some people maybe more. It's also you figure out that the beliefs and the way that you've behaved and handled problems, even handled yourself and your family and people around you, is not working anymore because you're probably stuck. And this is how you actually come to this path of, okay, something needs to be done, I guess.
Yeah, and I obviously am generalizing, but as part of the conditioning in your upbringing and the education system is like, if you do you get your diplomas, you do your work, you do what your boss tells you, you make promotion, yeah, and then it's like, yeah, then you earn money, yeah, you can buy a house, you can get married, you can have children, yeah, and then you work, and then you retire, you do nice things when you retire, whatever. Most people, well, already it's getting younger and younger, like, but let's say middle-aged people, like, that's not working anymore because my marriage is not super anymore, and I got problems with my kids, and my boss told me that I would get promotion, and I haven't get promotion in 10 years. So it's like, that's when people start to realize, like, all of these narratives, all of these promises are not working out. And by the way, physically, mostly, I start to feel lousy. I get back pain, I get neck pain, I get,
Mm,
yeah, well, maybe getting depressed or whatever, or burnout or whatever. Like, people are saying, that picture which they painted for me is not working out for me. And by the way, not for anyone. Yeah, and the
mm,
retirement age, which used to be like 65, is now they're pushing it now towards 70. And it's like, and most people when they retire, they get cancer, they get dementia, they get all of these stuff. So it's not like, oh, I'm gonna do a funny thing. No, you're not able to do it. So it's like, and you're already divorced, and your children don't want to see you. So it's like, all of these stories, these narratives are not true. And that's
mm,
when people realize, like, I need something else.
mm. Yeah, I agree with you. And to all the listeners, the sooner the better. Don't wait for something bad to happen. You don't have to experience pain. You can do it earlier. Trust us on this one. If I don't know what I'm talking about, Arnold surely knows.
Actually, not so long ago, and it was kind of a test as well. I trained an 11-year-old boy, and already I noticed a lot of conditioning.
Mm,
So it is, like I said, it's from very young age is part of our life. Yeah. So,
mm,
and you don't need it because but it's also like, I'm very well interested in sports. I used to do it actively, a lot of things, because of a car accident. I can't anymore. But it's like, I watch sports, I read about what I love it. Yeah? But for them, and people say, yeah, you could say it's a purpose, like I want to win a gold medal or I want to be a world champion, whatever. But behind that, in a lot of cases, it's a trauma. It's like, yeah, the parents told them they're not good enough and they're lousy, whatever. So it's an escape. So it's like everything. Yeah, it can be, mostly it's pain. It can be purpose, but mostly it's something in your upbringing which triggers you. Is like, I'm gonna show them that I am good enough. Huh?
mm, mm. I agree with you. Um, to wrap things up, one last question. For someone listening right now who feels either overwhelmed, not good enough, or just quietly aware they're living somebody else's life, what would you most want them to hear from you today?
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, this is super important point. Well, definitely worth repeating. I really like what you said about this inner critic because it is, and I think part of this is also the comparison bit because social media is destroying our ideas, what it means to be normal, what it means to be good enough, what it means to be just, regular person. Like, even if you want to fit in, you can't anymore because everyone is so much better than you and everybody has more money than you and everybody looks better than you and is more fit, and not to mention any other stuff. So, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Arnold, thank you so much for taking the time for this interview. People don't know, but I really messed up with the questions. It was very last minute sending them. But I'm glad that the whole interview was really more like a chat. I hope you didn't feel like an interview. It was more like a chat, and I loved listening to you. So thank you so much for being my guest.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.